Welcome back. It's Michael Rogers. Welcome to Bodywork Boxing. I want to talk about a lot of things today. Let's talk a little bit about the state of boxing. Man, it's a lot going on. We'll get to the face of boxing. First, I want to say, there was some time that had went by, and I was kind of still trying to understand what happened with the T.O. situation, and it's a multi-layered onion because at the end of the day, I was a T.O. fan, and through thick and thin, I've been doing videos about him, I've been talking about him, I've been supporting him. I didn't dog him. I was never one of the ones to call him T.O. female or T-ho or never. You know what I'm saying? I was kind of almost found myself being an apologist of some sorts at some point in time in defending T.O. or, actually talking about the real history, the truth behind T.O. and the moves that happened and all that, right? So the recent statements that he made, one, it's a couple sides, I really want to address this because I heard somebody else address it, but the way they did it was they said that they never heard anybody else say anything about it. But there's instances where the example they used, when that happened, we didn't hear them talk about that. And it boils down to this. That's really what it boils down to. And those statements he made where he said Top Rank, they can just keep their black fighters. Everything he said about Tim Bradley. The things that he said about Tim Bradley, I'll start there. The things that he said about Tim Bradley, I kind of took that with a grain of salt. You know what I'm saying? Even though I think that Andre Ward has been coming around. Like Andre Ward, I've been agreeing with a lot of things that Andre Ward's been saying. But it was a time when Tim Bradley and Ward, everybody on the internet were talking about all of the stuff that they were saying. And they were saying, oh yeah, company man. Tim Bradley is notoriously being known for being a company man right now. We know that when these former boxers, we love them inside the ring for what they did, all the memories and all that. We respect them as veterans and their input on the game. But we know that sometimes when they have to speak on things, there's a conflict of interest. It's just like sometimes you might hear Bernard Hopkins say some things because he's on that Golden Boy, and you be like, what? But you gotta understand, he's under Golden Boy. That's just like Tim Bradley. We understand that Tim Bradley is under Top Rank. My issue with the whole thing is you can't have fake outrage now because T.O. is actually telling the truth about Tim Bradley. If you recall, Tim Bradley actually has a pattern of going out of his way saying outlandish things, like a couple outlandish things he said about Earl Spence and he said about Tank. And if you think about it more recently, he was basically went on a slander campaign talking about, oh man, Tank is this and the way he treat women, and he was just going on and on and on. I'm like, man, you sure are emotional about a guy that's not, on Top Rank. You know what I'm saying? He's not affiliated with ESPN. Even though his knockouts probably get aired on there, but he's not one of your guys, but you go out of the way. But I didn't hear all these things about Felix Verdejo. I didn't hear about the animosity where he, because Tank is not guilty of what Tim Bradley is claiming for, but Felix Verdejo actually is in jail or went to jail for. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not giving him any publicity, but it's different energy, just like all the outlandish things that he said about Earl Spence. Granted, things happen outside of the ring and that, this and that, but he goes out of his way to say that. I was waiting for Tim, other than being dismissive, I was waiting for Tim Bradley to come out and address it. The only other thing that I can say about when T.O. said let Top Rank have their black fighters, if you don't recall, there was an NBF. There was a time where there was an NBF and people were actually making videos and talking about it, and this flooded the news in boxing news. It flooded the news, for a minute, where people were just pointing out how, oh man, like why top ranked fighters that look like they don't want to fight black fighters and this and this. This was real news for those people who just started tracking, or maybe you might have just became a hardcore. This was real news where people ate off of this topic. It wasn't until Bud left that Top Rank kind of twisted their trajectory. They got a crop of new fighters from, you know, several from the Olympics. You know, Keyshawn Davis, Robisi Romero, you know, DB3. You know, they got a bunch of talent that they infused. They got Big Baby. You know, they put their foot on the gas and put, you know, Shakur as really their centerpiece. Somehow they went and acquired Devin, and they gave Big Baby a lot of liberties in being able to promote himself. His ring walk's been epic. They've been putting a lot of things in there. What they were accused of before the Buzz situation, they kind of righted that ship. And I think part of it is because Bob kind of, even though he called the shots at the end of the day, you know, they convinced Bob that, hey, let us do our thing. And if you look at it, the shift has been, because it used to always be on Lomachenko, the shift is now towards the younger black fighters that they have, because that's the ones that are actually dominating Top Rank right now. You know, every time they have a card, they can do 2-3 cards, and they got a serious lineup of talent. Now, the Top Rank diet and all that, that's a whole different subject. So I don't disagree in the fact that you can clearly see that Top Rank is going in a positive direction in regards to highlighting the young black fighter. My whole thing is after he got the backlash for not clearing it up, my whole thing was he doubled down and then reposted a picture of him and the former president. I'm just like, see, now, even if I was on your side and I understood and agreed, and it's not anything against that former president, but people know that the affiliation of that is a big deal. So I'm like, what message are you sending? And why we don't clear it up? And why, you know, because for me, I don't want to go to a fight with, especially let's just say it's Tank. Let's say it's Tank and TR. I'm not going to want to go to a fight. And the last time he was in Baltimore, I went to that fight. But when I go to that fight, I don't want to be looking at the fans that come out to support T.O. like on some whole it's war outside of this type thing. And that's where he lost me. And that's why I think, man, that he really needs to bridge that gap. He lost a lot. His stock took a big hit because now people are just, they want Josh Taylor to do his thing. And before, they might have looked at it more of an even playing field and took into account what T.O. Weapons got. But at the end of the day, he has to get in the ring and prove everybody right or prove everybody wrong. And that's just the pulse of boxing in regard to T.O. This kind of overshadowed the positive thing that I was tracking for T.O., in which he basically rehired his amateur coach, the one that specialized in footwork, you know, planning the escape route, getting in, you know, things like that. Because I had always been saying that T.O. needed somebody else outside of his father, you know, in his corner. Kind of like how Tank did with bringing in Kenny Porter to oversee and be a third set of eyes and to implement this, to do this. And then we seen the adjustment that Tank, you know, he didn't start as slow. You know, he was conscious of people saying that he was behind rounds. So you see what the performance was with him bringing him in. So I was like, man, you know, Senior needed to bring in somebody for T.O. Or T.O. needed to bring in somebody for himself, because he needed a different set of eyes. You know, sometimes things can get stale, or maybe it's something that you're missing, or it's just, you know, fine tuning. But he did bring in his former amateur coach. But this latest news overshadowed all of that. So while I agree that Tim Bradley do be saying some outlandish things, especially now since he's been inducted in the Hall of Fame, and the energy is not the same when you are in a position, a mentor type position at Top Rank, and you don't cover down on that, but you have all this energy towards things that don't really or shouldn't really concern you in the grand scheme of things, because that's what PBC and what in their fighters that they got going on. So I do say that. And then also, I will acknowledge that Top Rank has done a better job at promoting the black fighters. Now, the way T.O. put it, because he wasn't involved in the plans, he made it a derogatory thing. So I think for some of his fans, he still got to come out and clarify, like, what do you mean? Like, are you really standing, like, what are you standing on? Are you still rock with, like, clarify, because you don't want all of them people up against you, man. Especially when you have talent, you young, you always getting the mic shoved in your face, and you might not, be so political. You might just speak right away, like the first thing that pop out, you're just gonna say it, and that might not be the best thing to do. So we have a lot of people wanting him to come out and say, something, set the record straight for black people. We got Regis going over there to fighting on Matchroom, and ultimately it's gonna land with him getting an opportunity to unify with Subriel Matias. I think Eddie is also courting him. Eddie also just signed Andy Cruz. In the history, he's known for having beat Keyshawn Davis, the silver medalist, and he actually got the gold. Cuban boxer, highly anticipated, about to make his first debut. So Eddie's making some noise. Not all good, but for the majority, Eddie has been doing his thing for the most part. He got a couple little things, a couple little glimpses of things, especially when it comes to the face of boxing and, the maneuver that they're actually making, and that aiding and abetting, a felon with a ski mask, a ginger colored ski mask on. But I'm going to talk about that later. We also have Devin Haney and Loma, a highly anticipated fight that everybody's waiting really to see the results. I think some people are a little bit too high on Devin, some people are a little bit too low on Loma, and I think it's somewhere right around the middle where this fight is a lot more competitive, especially since the different stances. We've seen Loma against orthodox fighters as a southpaw. The last case that we have to look at is Devin against JoJo as a southpaw. And JoJo wasn't necessarily, in his prime, I would say. I think he might have been a little bit past it, or maybe didn't have he wasn't highly esteemed as he once was. As sharp as Kenny Porter used to talk about him when he was in the, Olympics and all that, when he was doing his thing out there, and he had to evaluate the talent for, the amateurs in the Olympics, and how he spoke of it. Wasn't the same. So I think that this fight, because we're looking at a Loma, people questioning what Lomachenko are we getting, but we're looking at a Loma who has had activity. I'm not sure if Devin Haney can be as offensive as Jermaine Ortiz, but he's definitely defensive. He definitely will sit there and jab you to death by 1,000 jabs. Even Coach Calvin called him a jab smith, and he has mastered that jab. I believe that with Loma, you're going to need something else other than the jab, and you gotta always come behind it. A lot of times when a fighter, they might get deemed as a born fighter because they're just sticking to, just winning and getting out and just outpointing and things like that, instead of really taking the bull by the horns, showing tactical aggression, accurate punching, and actually landing some big shots, making some difference. So you can't get robbed on the scorecards. I think that the scorecards will be big in this fight, because a lot of people, if you got your ears to the street, a lot of people are saying that Jermaine Ortiz actually got robbed. I don't see him as being robbed, but I could see how you could say he would win. Only because I think there were times when, he needed to step on the gas and be more opportunistic, and he kind of let up because Loma started, clicking a little bit. So I think the late starter Loma, he might get outpointed, but he's known to be on the back end to actually tune it up. And once he figure out if it's not too late, like he did with T.O., he waited till about the 8th round to start really cranking it up. I think if he does that with Devin, he's definitely going to lose. I think that it's a lot of pressure on both of them. And like my old head said, he said it's probably more pressure on Lomachenko. And I would have to agree with him, only because he knows that this is his last bite at the apple. There was a lot of talk about Tank and Ryan Garcia, and if he quit, if he didn't quit. You know, we dealt with the whole rehydration clause. We dealt with the catch weight. We dealt with, you know, the face of boxing, you know, intermixed with some Bud and Spence talk and all that. But I just gotta point something out, man, when it comes to the face of boxing. You got the face of boxing, which, you know, I would say, man, if you close your eyes and think about who runs boxing or what's the first boxer to come to mind when you close your eyes and think about boxing today. Not only think for yourself, but think about boxing as a whole, casual and hardcore alike. Whose name or whose face pops up in your mind? You know, that might tell you something. A lot of times, especially when it came to Canelo, when it came to Floyd, it was who was the money man, who was actually selling the tickets, putting butts in seats, who were bringing all of the stars out, regardless of who they fought. You know, that was the answer. You know, for Floyd, for Canelo, for Oscar, you know, that was the answer. Who was getting to the chicken? That was the answer. Somehow when Tank grabs or makes a concerted effort to actually really stake a claim as such and show and prove, it's not that way anymore. So that drew a lot of people to Ginger, Canelo Alvarez, right? And so I called it a long time ago that he was going to fight John Ryder. Well before it was documented that he was going to fight John Ryder. I'm going to do a video about it, and I'll put it out there. But Canelo Alvarez is in my age well game. And I believe that this decision, because when you look back at it, he could have fought David Benavidez, followed by Jamal Charlo or Earl Spence. But instead, they fattened the pot over there with the zone, and they gave him a deal to go ahead and fight Dimitri Bivol, who he thought was a cherry pick. Red flag, red flag. The trilogy match with Triple G, who was past his prime, waited on Murata for almost 2 years, got his belt, then moved up finally and fought Triple G. Didn't stop Triple G, along with John Ryder, with the excuse that he has a surgery. And I respect boxers. I know you get hand injuries and all that. I just think that when someone like Bivol beats you, or when somebody upsets the apple cart, so to speak, in the minds of everybody, then I believe that you cannot slight the victory by saying your hand is hurt. It's one thing if you still win and be like, man, I could have did this and this and that, but I was hurt. That's different because you still win. But when you lose and you do that, it's just like with Manny Pacquiao and the shoulder thing after Floyd, all of that stuff. It doesn't show the victory, or it doesn't give respect to the opponent who was actually to have a better night and best you in that square circle. So now we have it till after we see the results with Canelo Alvarez and John Ryder. And before the fight, just like Anthony Joshua said with Jermaine Franklin, when he got all this backlash saying that if he loses to Jermaine Franklin, he's going to retire. Well, Canelo said the same thing. Wasn't received quite the same. Nobody made a big deal. So should the face of boxing be fighting somebody to where he's willing to go on record and say that if he loses, he'll retire, when you're putting yourself or your favorite fighter as the face of boxing? Ask yourself that question. Well, Canelo said that before the fight, and even though he had success, he dropped Ryder, broke his nose. John Ryder had Canelo Alvarez's head looking like a Pez dispenser. This is all I saw. John Ryder was rocking that, you know what I'm saying, that chin bone. It just, Canelo do got a chin, you know, but John Ryder was doing more than surviving. He was fighting back, but Canelo could not get rid of the man. A guy who has been stopped before and beat 5 times previously. He couldn't do it. So, excuse me. So, after the fight, when he was interviewed about John Ryder, and he was asked a question about John Ryder, he said, man, what do you say to people who, you know, would have liked to see you, you know, put an exclamation mark on this fight? You know, ended with some kind of punctuation, stop him, knock him out. He said, well, a win for these guys is not getting knocked out. This is what people are arguing about, the face of boxing. Now, I'm gonna give you an example, and I'm gonna tell you why you gotta be real with your friends. You gotta be real with people who talk boxing, and you always gotta keep it a buck. Because I had a homie was doing shows with, doing, you know what I'm saying, doing numbers, you know, setting trends, you know, doing the thing. And we fell out because, I'm not gonna say, but if you go back and you look at an episode earlier of the boxing mascot, my man was on there, and he was online, and he made a call. Now, keep in mind, I had told the chairman of the boxing mascot years ago in the DM that Canelo wasn't who he said he was. He left me on red. It wasn't until me and my partner started doing some things. He ran down my videos as if he never saw my videos, never do this. And I used to chat in the comments, super chat, do all that. You know, very much Ben knew who I was, right? So in the build up to the TankDavis fight, you know, my man's on there, you know, he's guest appearing. They just smearing shit all over Tank. You know what I'm saying? Playing devil's advocate, just, you know, you know, putting up all these things, moving all these goalposts, just moving goalposts after goalpost after goalpost. So they laugh. They got super chat. They got bread. You know, Tank keep the lights on. Inside the ring, he'll put your lights out. Outside the ring, he keep the lights on. So, okay, I understand. I'm growing immune to that now. I see why he do things. So, we fast forward to today, after the Canelo fight, when they're actually on the boxing mascot talking about, you know, Canelo and is he slipping, and, you know, what he should do next, and he's still the face of boxing, and blah, blah, blah. So, my man's calling again. And lo and behold, because we're talking about Canelo, guess who got yelled at and hung up on? My man. Over Canelo, because he kept it real and said, listen, man, if you think about the face of boxing, he started talking about Tank, he started, you know, saluting Tank for what he was able to do, and it didn't sound like he was going in the direction of, you know, putting on the knee pads when it came to Canelo. He didn't spray any of that throat coat on when it came to Canelo. He didn't put any tonsil jewelry on when it came to Canelo. He got yelled at and kicked off. And said, that's your time. Man, should I just rest my case there? I will rest my case there to show you the double standards and everything. I would rest my case there. But the last thing I gotta talk about is I'm not really gonna talk about the odds. I'm gonna talk about this narrative. And I've talked about, I did a video about it. I did a video about David Morrell, how he's been fighting Canelo's mandatories with the WBA since 2020. So for the last 3 years. I did a video about Bivol and Dimitri Bivol saying that we need to fight at 68. Now, Bivol is finding himself in between a rock and a hard place because the sanctioning body won't sanction the fight between him and Beterbiev for Undisputed at 175, which is his legacy fight. That's the fight that I'll forever, you know, say push for it, but they're blackball him on that fight and not letting him get that. And now he's telling Canelo, I want to do it at 68. So you cannot use that same excuse up at 75 that you did when you lost, saying, oh, I was moving up. Even though he beat Kovalev, went down, then he came back up and was like, he was just a bigger man, and this, all this daring to be great, when I always say he was daring to be great. Bivol says, no, I want you at 68, where people say you're still the man, where you still have something that you can actually lose, something that I can actually take, outside of just defending mine up here at 75 again. And Canelo is saying, no, I don't want you to be able to use the excuse that I drained you down and I this. No, we don't need you to be all that. No, you the face of boxing, right? No, we want you to use that. No, we want you to be at your best, which is at 168, which you've proven, which you got undisputed for. when you went through all of them people from across the pond and Caleb Plant, when you went through on your run after David Benavidez no longer had the belt. No, we want you to keep that same energy that you mustered up after David didn't have that belt anymore. And we want you to allow Bivol to fight you at 68 for all of the marbles. We want you to pay that man, since you are the cash cow. We'll see, you know what I'm saying? We got some numbers need to come out, but since you the cash cow, we want you to take care of Bivol in a financial way and allow that man to fight you at 168. Is the sanctioning body going to get in the way? Is the WBA going to help out David Morrell? Are they finally going to give David Benavidez the opportunity, because it was billed as though the winner of that fight between him and Plant would actually get to see the winner, get to see Canelo. That's what it was billed as. So is that the face of boxing? Anyway, that was pretty much the pulse of boxing. There's a lot of little other things like O'Shaquie Foster, you know, declaring his independence. You know, he's a free agent. You know, he said he got big news coming up. Got Big Baby having a card coming up. Janet Beck getting ready to defend his title again. Franchon proves his earn. They got to be coming up soon. You know, we got Jadeja Green waiting in the wings. We got Clarissa Shields getting ready to do her thing with Hannah Gabriels. There's a lot of things going on. You know, so there's a lot of little things that I could get off or dive into, whatever, but that's the pulse. That's how I feel about this whole face of boxing. I think that the goalposts get moved, you know. I know who the face of boxing is right now. Everybody knows who the face of boxing is. I want to get and do a show about the ranking, you know what I'm saying? Because I think I ruffled a lot of feathers when I said if belts matter. Now, I want to do a show about if rankings matter, and I also want to finally do this episode on is sparring still safe? There's a lot to think about, man. Thanks for everybody who tune in. You know, thanks for everybody who take the time to like my videos, take the time to comment on my videos. I engage with everybody. You know what I'm saying? Even if you silly, I'm gonna give you some silly shit, you know what I'm saying, to think about if you hop in my comment section. But I truly do appreciate everybody who support the channel, everybody who like, everybody who share the videos, and just, you know, give positive feedback. Even though I do accept and welcome all feedback, negative or not. Thanks for tuning in here at Bodywork Boxing, where we don't take things for face value. We do that body work.